What up, my peeps? So, I'm gonna try to do these videos a little bit earlier tonight. So hopefully, I don't get interrupted. But there might still be like one or two people in the building still. The cleaning guy is here still. So, if I gotta stop to talk to somebody real quick, shouldn't be an issue. But anyway, yeah, man. I got a fresh cut. Trimmed up the goatee, so I gotta make some videos, while I'm looking fresh. But anyways, hopefully you guys are all doing good. I'm enjoying this time of the year. Like I said before, I love October. I love Halloween. I've been like binge watching like all kinds of scary movies. Like last weekend, I pretty much worked all weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night. And each night I watched at least like two or three scary movies. So I was having a good time. Like I don't get scared, even though I'm inside this big ass building by myself like all night, it don't bother me. But anyway, I'm gonna do two videos for you guys this week, maybe three, but for sure two. I'm gonna do a prison story for you guys. And then I'm also going to do a paranormal video for you guys. Hope you guys are enjoying those. I mean, I could tell you are from the comments. It seems like you guys really enjoy those. But so anyway, this first story is going to be a prison story, and like I've talked about before, this one happened at Corrections Corporation of America. Private prison in Florence, Arizona, 1200 unit. I know I've done a lot of stories about 1200 unit. That's where I did. I worked in 1200 unit for like quite a while, like a couple of years, on day shift and on second shift. And 1200 unit always had like a lot of high custody inmates. So there was always stuff going on. It was always jumping in 1200 unit. And this one is going to be about this particular inmate that I had a really hard time with. Pretty much all the COs in the unit had a hard time with. But I guess like kind of came down to me and him because so what it was like the pod that this inmate was in, was what we call the gang pod, and it's not called the gang pod because there's gang members in it. Even though there was plenty of them, but it's called a gang pod because it's a bigger pod. There's like usually like 90 to 100 inmates in a gang pod, and the cells are like dorm style. They call them gang pods. So like there's like the big cells in there hold like 12 to 15 inmates. And then there's a couple of smaller ones, like in the corner, that hold 3 inmates. But yeah, the majority of the cells in the gang pod are dorm style. So there's a lot of inmates in there. So the problem that happened with this inmate in that pod was like, so I'm gonna kind of try to explain it so people understand. Usually, like when you have a pod of inmates, there'll be like a guy that's like either the most experienced, and they're usually a tough guy. Not always the toughest guy, but a lot of times they'll be like an OG, and they run the pod because they're usually the most experienced, the smartest. They know how to operate. They know how to run the pod to where they're not going to cause a lot of friction between the inmates and the COs because they know. Like what you want is for the COs to leave the pod alone, basically. So what they do is they basically tell the inmates that are in their pod, like, don't be giving the COs a hard time unless they're being disrespectful. Like if the COs are acting stupid, then hey, you got to stick up for yourself or whatever. But yeah, for the most part, though, they want things to run smooth. That way, there's no like repercussions, because if a pod is being run by somebody that is like just acting stupid towards the COs and like basically letting the pod run wild, like just doing dumb shit, then obviously COs are constantly going to be coming in there to search that pod, to take inmates out of that pod that need to go to segregation, that need to go to lockdown. So a smart pod boss doesn't want that. He doesn't want to draw attention to the pod. You know what I mean? Like I said, repercussions, right? So, anyways, it was a bad situation in this pod because the dude running it was a young punk, and the reason I say that is because you'll you'll see in a minute. So like he was kind of a bigger dude. He was maybe like about 5'11", and he was a paisa. He was from Mexico. And just to make things clear, like I got along with all the races. Like didn't matter if you were paisa, Chicano, native, black, or other, whatever, Pacific Islanders. I treated everybody the same. But this dude was just like he was like in his early 20s, and he was kind of a bigger dude. So what happened was he had a crew of a bunch of young punks behind him, like maybe about I would say like maybe about 15 to 18 youngsters that were all like thug types, and so they were pretty much running the pod, and they had all the other inmates like kind of in fear of them, like the weaker inmates. And there was no like the thing that was bad about this pod. There was no opposition. Like there wasn't like any other race in that pod to like kind of keep them like in line, like by being a kind of a counterbalance of power. You know what I mean? So the pod was mostly paisas, and it was being run by that crew of young paisas. So it was a bad situation because they were being like really hostile towards like any COs that would come in the pod. Especially there was an incident where a female CO that used to work with us, she was really cool. She was about the same age as me, and she was an attractive lady. And so a couple of the inmates in there were kind of harassing her, like making inappropriate comments, and like just kind of making her feel uncomfortable. So that type of stuff was like on a regular basis in that pod, right? So it got to the point where none of the other COs wanted to go in that pod. And like I'm not trying to make it sound like, I'm the only like brave CO or I'm the biggest baddest CO, in that unit, but basically it came to the point where I was like almost the only CO that would go in that pod to like do the security walks or whatever. A couple of the other COs would go in there like together sometimes, like as a pair, but none of them really wanted to go into that pod. So I kind of started dealing with this pod on a regular basis. So of course this dude, he kind of like started giving me a lot of attitude, and so I kept like kind of checking him and having issues with him and his crew. So basically what happened was we kind of had a verbal in the hallway one day, and it almost came to blows. Like it came pretty close to coming to blows, but one of the case managers stepped in and just told him to go to his pod or whatever, and then basically told me to stay out of that pod for the rest of the day. I thought it was BS. I think they should have locked him up right there, but it didn't happen for whatever reason. I guess that case manager probably didn't want to do the paperwork or something, But so what ended up happening was it's actually happened on Thanksgiving Day, and what ended up happening was, the way we did it on Thanksgiving is like we would only send like one gang cell out at a time. And it was to keep the inmates from coming out twice to get 2 trays because, they got served like a pretty good meal on Thanksgiving. All like pretty much all the same stuff, everybody else is eating like on the outside. Maybe not exactly the same, quality or whatever, but like turkey and mashed potatoes, gravy, pumpkin pie, all that. They actually got 2 trays, like one hot tray and one cold tray. But thing that happened was when his gang cell got opened, um, they they were like taking their time, like coming out. Like I don't know why, because you would think they'd want to come out and get their, their Thanksgiving meal or whatever, but they were just like really taking their time, and so I was like, come on, let's go, man. We got to keep it moving, because we're on on a schedule, like when we've got to feed the whole unit, you know what I mean? So he got attitude with me, and he said something like, I don't know, like he just was disrespectful. He cursed at me, said something disrespectful, and I told him, keep running your fucking mouth, and I'm gonna make sure you guys eat last. I'll lock you back in your cell and make sure you guys eat last after the whole unit eats. And then he basically told me like, I'm sick and fucking tired of you, talking shit to me, and he basically told me, you better be careful or I'm gonna have this whole pod jump on you. And I was like, oh really? I said, so it's like that. You're afraid to fight me heads up 1-on-1, so you gotta sick the whole pot on me. And he he started trying to talk tough after that, like, oh, I'll fight you by myself. I don't need the pod, but he was telling me like, I'm just basically letting you know, I got the control right here, not you. He's like, I'll have this whole pod get you, and they'll fuck you up bad, and all this shit, just talking all this stupid shit, right? I was like, all right. So as soon as we got out to the hallway, I told the unit manager, I said, you need to lock this motherfucker up right here. He just threatened me. And the unit manager was like, oh man, are you serious? Like, he was like pissed that he had to do, actually had to do something, I guess, on on a holiday. He was probably mad that he was there. I mean, we were all mad that we were there, but that's how it is being in corrections. Like, you got to work holidays. Prisons don't close down for holidays, so we got to be there too, right? But so so he called him out of line, took him to his office, and so he ended up getting locked up, and I think a couple of guys from his crew ended up getting locked up too, for some comments they were making. Like, I guess once he got locked up, they started running their mouths in line, so they ended up getting locked up too. Um, but so he was gone for like about 30 days in segregation, and so when he came back, I don't know why, I don't know whose bright idea it was to put him back in the very same pod, but yeah, they put him back in the very same pod, and like, so the very first day that I seen him back in his pod, of course, it was the same thing. He didn't threaten me like right off the bat, but he started talking crap again, like just like trying to stare me down, all that dumb shit. And but he didn't realize that there was a new inmate. Like, basically, there's usually a top dog in almost every unit. That's like, there'll be like a pod boss in each pod, but then there'll be like a top dog, like a dude that just like whatever he says goes, like for the whole unit. And it's usually like the toughest dude, um, but they got to have like some, like, you know, it's not just some big, stupid idiot that can beat everybody up. It's got to be somebody that kind of like a boss, like somebody that has some power. And he didn't know that there was this inmate in our unit. He was a Sureño, um, and he was like, maybe, like, I would say like in his mid 30s, and he was pretty swole. He was a little bit shorter than me, but he was like real stocky, like, pretty big dude, and he was cool too, like really chill. Worked really good with the COs, and I used to chop it up with them all the time, and like, yeah, I used to tell them like, hey, yeah, as long as you keep these youngsters in line and they don't make our job hard, like, at least I used to tell them I can speak for me, and most of the COs in this unit, we won't sweat the little shit, like, we won't be in here like, doing unnecessary shakedowns, or or sweating you guys for bullshit, you know. So we had a lot of mutual respect, right? So as soon as this young punk idiot came back, I was like, you know what? I ain't even gonna deal with this dude the CO way, the paperwork way or whatever, you know. And I was like, I'm not even trying to because he was already like trying to gain control of the pod back because a lot of his crew was still there, like maybe like about 10 or 12 dudes were still there, right? So I ain't gonna, I mean, I ain't gonna lie, I wasn't trying to fight this dude unless somehow like I ran into him in the hallway and it was just me and him because he had at least like 10 or 12 other guys that were probably gonna jump in if I try to fight him. So I'm not stupid, I ain't Superman, you know what I'm saying? So I just decided, you know what, I'm gonna go talk to this to the unit, inmate, boss, the one I was talking about. So one day I was doing my security walk through his pod and I just, told him, hey, what's up, so and so. I said, hey, can I holler at you real quick? And he was like, yeah, what's up, Diaz? And so I just kind of started telling him, the situation and who it was, and he goes, yeah, I know who you're talking about. I actually heard something about that, that you guys almost got into it, and he, got sent to SEG, got locked down or whatever. And he told me, he goes, you know what? And to tell you the truth, this has happened to me a couple times throughout my career as a CO. And it's not because, I was like some quote unquote inmate lover or something like, some super cops might try to say. It was just because I was always all totally respectful and professional. I mean, not perfect, not like I was perfect, but I always try to be professional and I always try to be very respectful, and so the majority of the time, like, I always had a lot of respect from the OGs, or the pod bosses or whatever, So, I mean, he told me, you know what, Diaz? He goes, don't even worry about this dude. He goes, I'm gonna get word to him. If I don't see him, he goes, but if he goes the next time, he goes, no, he goes, do you know better? Yeah, he goes, I'm gonna wait till I see him in person, and I'm gonna tell him like, you know what, you need to squash all that shit because COD he don't sweat nobody on the unit unless they give him a real good reason. He gets along with everybody, and that shit that you're trying to pull, man, that's all bad. We don't want that kind of heat coming down on the unit. So either you squash it or I'm gonna squash you. He said he was gonna tell him like he said I'm gonna tell this fool like straight to his face like if you don't chill out with all that shit, I'm gonna beat him down, straight up. So I guess what ended up happening was he hey, have a good night. So what ended up happening was I'm not even sure if he told him in person or if he got word to him, but that dude was so scared of this other inmate that he fucking rolled his shit up and told one of the case managers that he needed to move. He needed to get out of the unit because his life was in danger. I mean, I guess at first he didn't really want to give details, and because that's like pretty much being a snitch. But yeah, I guess eventually he because they told him they weren't going to move him unless he told them like who was threatening him or whatever. So he ended up spilling the beans and just told them, an inmate in such and such pod, wants to get me, and I don't want no problems or some BS like that. But that fool was scared, so they moved him to some other unit, and I never seen his ass after that. And his crew, his boys, the ones that were left, they were quiet as fuck. After he left, they were acting all like timid and shit, which is fine. I mean, you know, they weren't acting all stupid like they were when he was there, but I guess they were just kind of following his lead or whatever. But anyway, I was just glad that we managed to get rid of that idiot and it didn't end up being a bad situation. Or because I'm not gonna lie, like I didn't really say this earlier, but when that day when on Thanksgiving when he told me he was gonna like basically like sick the whole pot on me, I was scared. I mean, that shit scared me because I've never been in a situation where an inmate told me like it ain't just gonna be one on one. It's gonna be the whole pod on your ass. I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't think anybody wants to think about fighting about freaking 30 or 40 dudes. Because more than likely your ass is gonna end up in ICU or dead. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, I'm just thankful that shit didn't happen and that punk fool got rolled out, got what he deserved. I mean, it would have been better if Homeboy would have smashed him, but I guess he knew what was coming, so he got the fuck out of Dodge. But anyway, that's another one for you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to hit like, don't forget to subscribe, and don't forget to comment. And then I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Your big homie Cisco. Peace.